it is no longer news that the country is bleeding billions every year due to corruption and wastage in government.
It is also not news that people in power can get away with stealing the citizens blind.
Perhaps the money lost could save the lives of thousands of Kenyans living with cancer.
And today's Graph Diaries, Adelaide Changole looks at the cost of corruption and what we are forgoing to perpetuate this scourge.
During the reading of the national budget every year, the Secretary of the National Treasury always points out that 90% of the budget is funded locally, meaning that the government gets 90% of its funds from taxing the local population. These funds come from the average taxpayer who has to pay 30% income tax, 16% value-added tax, excise tax, fuel levy, railway development levy, customs duty, stamp duty, and a myriad of other taxes to fund state expenditure.
We have a very big government in every way. We pay taxes. One of the largest one of the largest in terms of taxation, the quantum in East Africa. We pay very big taxes. We pay income tax and we pay the other consumption taxes.
Unfortunately, while Kenyans faithfully contribute billions to state coffers to finance service delivery, they are subjected to less than stellar financial management of their funds. According to the Office of the Auditor General, the government loses 1/3 of its budgetary allocation, which translates to about 300 billion shillings annually.
The odd 600 million getting lost here, the odd 1 billion getting lost there, the odd others 200-300 million getting all there. When they all add up in a year, and then after a year, into the several years that you speak about, the loss is actually massive. It is massive. So yes, it's a good proportion of Kenya's GDP that is probably lost, if you compare it to GDP, that is lost to corruption every year. And remember that it's cumulative. So obviously, it's a big loss. And I think it's a really, really big burden to Kenya's taxpayers, because it's the taxpayers whose money is wasted in that way.
But how can the government lose 30% of the budget, you ask? How can 300 billion shillings just disappear? According to a recent report by the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, the secret is in inflating the cost of tenders, single sourcing products from a pre-selected vendor, and timing expenditures confidential to escape scrutiny. According to the PAC report, the Ministry of Internal Security and Provincial Administration could not account for 2.85 billion shillings that was supposedly spent on confidential expenditure and featured cash withdrawals of up to 130 million shillings in a single day on the 26th of February 2013. The state also spent 1.31 billion shillings procuring 300 residential units for both Kenya Police and Administration Police. The units, quite ironically, would require uniformed officers to share premises that were complete with an armory with civilians. The project was single-sourced and the cost inflated by 30 million shillings. Then there was the petrol station that was supposedly built in State House for 88.8 million shillings in 2011, but which stalled just 1 month after the contract was issued. Even more ironically, State House supposedly decided to convert the petrol station into offices in 2013. Even the judiciary, which is the custodian of the rule of law, featured in the list, with the committee raising doubts about transactions amounting to 2 billion shillings. So too was the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which apparently spent 9.25 billion shillings procuring biometric voter registration kits, electronic voter identification devices, universal polling kits, and electronic results transmission systems without an approved procurement plan. This, the committee noted, flouted the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. The State Law Office was also found culpable for the loss of 6.35 million shillings in the Ministry of Roads owing to their cavalier attitude in defending public interest. And despite being devolved, the Ministry of Medical Services remains saddled with pending bills amounting to 13.22 million shillings, which the county governments have declined to inherit and settle. And this is not to mention the ghosts of Anglo Leasing and Kenren, both of which have cost taxpayers 66 billion shillings since their inception. And the state could also not justify the expense of another 30 billion shillings. Cumulatively, the loss is a staggering 108 billion shillings.
Because I think it shows the inability to account for spending, just for your taxes and mine. It's a big problem, I think. It's a big problem. And I think it's a big constraint to Kenya's growth. But most importantly, it's not surprising then that Kenya spent a lot of money in terms of taxes. But in terms of the efficiency of our spending, we are one of the lowest. Efficiency in terms of what you get, in terms of the quality of public service related to what you related to what we spend is one of the lowest, both in our region, but also in Africa generally.
But what is the opportunity cost of this wanton corruption? What could the 108 billion shillings have done had it not been lost? Well, there is the obvious. It could have funded the rehabilitation of the Nairobi commuter rail project and financed the Nairobi bypass project. On top of this, the state could have kitted each county with 2 radiotherapy, MRI and CT scan machines and 5 dialysis machines. Each county would also get 5 new schools, and the state would be able to hire 35,000 teachers, all for the cost of 108 billion shillings. However, given the current cancer crisis facing the country, owing to a shortage of equipment and doctors, the state could also have used the money to set up 8 mini cancer treatment centers around the country. The balance could have been used to establish a full-fledged cancer treatment and research center at the Kenyatta National Hospital with screening, diagnostic, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and rehabilitation facilities. It would also house research facilities that would allow for complete integration of research and treatment, all at the cost of $1 billion or 92 billion shillings. The government would even be able to set up a 10 billion shilling scholarship fund that would be used to train medical students who want to study oncology. This would reduce the shortage in doctors and allow quicker treatment of cancer patients. But of course, all this is just a pipe dream, showcasing what Kenyans forwent when the government lost 108 billion shillings. Instead of all the above, we just have this: a report from the Parliamentary Accounts Committee detailing government wastage over the last 1 year. How is that for a trade-off? Adelaide Changole, KTN.